I wasn't supposed to be there. It was the kind of evening that was meant for everyone else, but not for me. Corporate parties were always a blur of faces, handshakes, and laughter that felt like it belonged to a different world. But this one was different. This was the night that would change everything. I didn't expect to even go. The invitation had come late, after a few reminders from my wife, Lena. She'd told me it would be good for me to join her, an opportunity to meet some people, to get out of my shell. I wasn't sure why she cared. We'd been married for 4 years, and I still couldn't quite figure her out. Not that I didn't love her, but Lena was a mystery to me. The dress code was business casual, but I always felt out of place. There was something about these events that made me feel small, like I was wearing the wrong clothes, speaking the wrong language. Still, I put on my best shirt, combed my hair, and stepped into the cold evening air as we headed to the venue. The gala was at an upscale venue. One of those places where the floors gleamed like mirrors, and every corner of the room seemed polished to perfection. It was impossible to ignore the wealth, the confidence, the way people moved and spoke as though they owned the world. As we walked into the venue, I felt like an intruder in a world I had no right to be a part of. Lena was radiant as always. Her presence filled the room as if it had been made for her, and I tried to shrink into the background. She was an executive at a tech firm, and even though I had no idea what she did half the time, I always knew that she was important. Her colleagues treated her with a level of reverence I couldn't understand. But that night, it was different. I noticed things I hadn't before. There was a man, tall, broad-shouldered, impeccably dressed. His name, I learned later, was Jack. He wasn't like the others. He stood apart, moving with an ease that made everyone gravitate toward him. He was one of Lena's colleagues, though I had never met him before. I could see the way he looked at her, the small gestures, the way their conversations lingered just a little too long. I told myself it didn't matter. I told myself I was being paranoid. But as the night wore on, I couldn't ignore the feeling that something was off. I watched them talk, and the way she laughed at his jokes, the way she touched his arm as they spoke, it felt different. I knew my insecurities were showing, but I couldn't help it. Something inside me twisted in knots. And then came the moment that changed everything. Lena had slipped away for a moment, her glass of wine still in her hand, as I stood awkwardly by the punch bowl, trying to look engaged. That's when Jack appeared at my side. He smiled at me, a warm smile that didn't quite reach his eyes, and we exchanged a few pleasantries. It was forced, and I could tell he didn't really care to be talking to me, but he was being polite. I wasn't surprised. In a room full of people who made their living playing the social game, I was just a shadow. It wasn't until later, when I was looking for Lena, that everything fell apart. I found her in the corner of the ballroom, laughing, of course, and chatting with Jack. I moved closer, feeling a strange pull in my chest, the weight of all the little signs that had been building all evening. But what I saw next was enough to shatter any doubt I had left. There they were. Jack leaned in closer to her than anyone should, his lips brushing hers in what looked like a soft, intimate kiss. It wasn't a casual peck. It was a kiss that lingered, a kiss that made the air around me feel thick, suffocating. I couldn't breathe. My heart pounded so loudly in my ears that I didn't hear the music, the chatter, or the clinking glasses. It was just the two of them, and then me. The man left on the outside, staring in. I froze, unsure of what to do. My feet felt like they were glued to the floor. I should have turned around and walked away. I should have left, gotten in my car, and gone home. But instead, I stayed there, watching the scene unfold before me. And then, as if in slow motion, Lena pulled away from Jack. She looked up, catching my gaze. And just like that, she smiled. A smile that was entirely too calm, entirely too practiced. And then she said the words I'll never forget. "It's just a kiss. It means nothing." And that was it. The words hit me like a slap in the face. It meant nothing? How could it mean nothing? I couldn't move. My legs felt like they were made of concrete, and every part of me screamed to run, to escape the situation. But I stayed there, frozen in place, watching Lena as she turned back to Jack, their conversation continuing as if nothing had happened. The kiss was still playing in my head, looping over and over, and I could feel the heat in my chest rising to my face. Her words rang in my ears, but I couldn't wrap my head around them. It means nothing. How could she say that with such ease, as if it was a trivial thing, something she could dismiss so effortlessly? But the look on her face, it wasn't the expression of someone who was guilty. It wasn't the kind of apology I had expected, the kind of remorse that should follow something like that. No, she looked casual. Almost too casual. I wanted to say something. I wanted to shout, to confront them both right there in front of everyone, but I couldn't find my voice. Instead, I watched them both laugh as if they were the only ones in the room, as if their little moment had meant nothing. I felt invisible, like I was just a shadow in the corner, a mere spectator to something far more important than I could ever be. I turned and walked away before I did something stupid. I needed air, space to breathe and think. I stepped outside onto the balcony, the cool night air hitting me like a slap to the face. I leaned against the railing, trying to calm the storm inside me, trying to piece together the mess of emotions that had exploded inside me in the span of just a few minutes. How had it come to this? I thought back to everything. Every small detail that had seemed insignificant at the time, but now felt like a glaring warning. The way Lena had been distant lately, the way she seemed so preoccupied with her work, the way she would always look at her phone when we were together, as if there was something she didn't want me to see. The late nights, the business trips, the team-building events that she always insisted I didn't need to attend. I had dismissed it all as normal, convinced myself that I was just being paranoid. But now I wasn't so sure. I looked back through the glass doors at the ballroom, and that's when I saw her again. Lena. She was standing with Jack, but this time, it wasn't just the two of them talking. She was holding a drink, and he was leaning in, whispering something in her ear. She laughed, loudly, as if it were something genuinely funny, and her hand rested casually on his shoulder. My stomach twisted at the sight. What had just happened between them? Was I really seeing something that I couldn't deny anymore? I was being played, wasn't I? I didn't know what kind of game this was, if this was a test, or if it had all been happening for much longer than I realized. But I could feel it. The unease in my gut, the sense that something had shifted. I wasn't naive. I had seen the signs, but I had ignored them. Now, they were slapping me in the face. But there was something else. The worst part wasn't even the kiss. It wasn't the way she dismissed it so easily. It wasn't even the way she was flirting with Jack in front of me. No, the worst part was the feeling of betrayal, the complete and utter isolation I felt in that moment. I was standing in a crowd full of people, but in that moment, I was more alone than I'd ever been in my life. I felt something inside me crack, something I didn't know existed before. It wasn't anger, not at first. It was a hollow feeling, like I had been hollowed out from the inside. I was supposed to be the one who knew her better than anyone else, the one who had shared my life with her. But now, I wasn't even sure if I knew who she really was. A part of me wanted to walk away, just leave the party and drive off into the night. But I couldn't do that. I wasn't sure what I was looking for, an explanation, an apology, closure. I had no idea, but I wasn't leaving without answers. I went back inside, and this time, when I looked for Lena, I didn't see her. Instead, I saw Jack, standing by the bar, laughing with another group of people. For the first time that night, I felt a fire in me, an urge to confront him, to say something, anything to get some kind of truth out of him. But before I could take a step, I saw Lena walking toward me. She looked flawless as always, but her eyes, the way she met my gaze, told me everything. She knew I knew. And yet, she smiled. That same damn smile. It wasn't the smile of a guilty person, not the smile of someone who had just betrayed their husband. It was almost as if she expected me to let it go. "Are you okay?" she asked, her voice casual, like we hadn't just had a moment that would forever change everything between us. I couldn't speak. I wanted to say something sharp, something cutting, but I couldn't find the words. Instead, I just nodded. And then she reached out to touch my arm, as if nothing had happened. I wanted to pull away, but I stayed still, waiting for her to say something. Anything that would make sense of the mess she had just created. "I'm sorry if you're uncomfortable, but it's just how things are in this world," she said. "Just how things are in this world." What the hell did that mean? Her words hung in the air like a sharp, unsettling echo. Just how things are in this world. I stared at her, trying to make sense of what she had just said. There was no trace of guilt on her face, no indication that she understood the weight of the situation. It was as if the kiss meant nothing, as if her actions had been entirely justified. I could feel the bile rising in my throat as a rush of frustration hit me all at once. Was she really trying to downplay this? To make it seem normal? For a moment, I just stood there, staring at her. I didn't know what to say. What could I say? She was acting like everything was fine, like she hadn't just shared an intimate moment with another man in front of me. My mind was racing, trying to find the words to confront her, but nothing seemed to fit. My mouth felt dry, and my heart hammered in my chest. I could feel the anger starting to build, but something else was creeping in too, doubt. Doubt about her. Doubt about everything I thought I knew. I finally managed to say, "What are you talking about? What do you mean how things are in this world? You kissed him, Lena, right in front of me. You kissed him like it was no big deal." My voice was low, controlled, but inside I was seething. "And then you brush it off like it's just some casual thing, like it's normal." She looked at me, her expression unreadable for a moment. "It's not like that, okay? You're overreacting." She sighed, as if the conversation was a minor inconvenience, something she didn't have time for. "You're making this bigger than it is." "Bigger than it is?" I almost laughed, but it came out more like a bitter chuckle. "Lena, you don't get it, do you? That kiss wasn't nothing. It wasn't just a casual joke, and I'm not overreacting." My voice cracked slightly, betraying the vulnerability I was trying to suppress. She looked away briefly, scanning the room as if she were waiting for someone, anyone, to come to her rescue. I hated the way she did that. Always so composed, so detached. I could feel the walls coming up between us, and no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't seem to tear them down. "Look," she said, her tone softening just a bit. "You know how this industry works. People flirt, they have fun, it's just part of the game." She leaned in closer, trying to catch my eye. "I love you, okay? But there are things in my world you just don't understand." It felt like a slap in the face. "My world," I repeated, barely able to hold back the sarcasm. "This is my world too, Lena. You're my wife. You're supposed to be mine. Not his." Her gaze hardened for a split second, and then it softened again, almost pitying. She put her hand on my shoulder, as if trying to comfort me. But I couldn't stand the touch. "You're making it sound worse than it is. Please, just relax. Let it go. It wasn't a big deal." But it was a big deal. I could feel it now more than ever. The distance that had grown between us, the realization that maybe things had changed, and I hadn't even seen it happening. She had crossed a line, and I couldn't pretend like it didn't matter. The silence stretched between us, and I could feel myself unraveling, every emotion I'd been holding back bursting to the surface. I took a step back, putting some distance between us, suddenly aware of how alone I felt in that moment. I had always tried to be the understanding husband, the one who gave her space, the one who supported her ambitions. But this was different. I can't just pretend like it's nothing, Lena. I can't ignore what happened. It's not something you can just gloss over." She sighed, her fingers brushing her hair back as if she were tired of the conversation. "You're right. I'm sorry if I hurt you. But this is who I am, okay? This is the world I live in. And if you can't handle that, then maybe we need to rethink this." My heart stopped. Rethink us. The thought hit me like a punch to the gut. Was she really saying what I thought she was saying? Was she suggesting that our relationship, our marriage, could just end over a kiss, over something that seemed so trivial to her? It didn't make sense. This wasn't some workplace misunderstanding. This was something deeper, something I couldn't ignore anymore. I was on the edge now, teetering between the urge to walk away and the need to fight for something that felt like it was slipping through my fingers. Before I could respond, the air around us shifted. The music from inside the ballroom seemed louder, the chatter and laughter more distant. It felt like the world had stopped, like I was in some kind of vacuum, cut off from everything else. But then, through the haze of emotions, I saw him, Jack. He was walking toward us with that same confident, cocky smile on his face. The smile that made my stomach churn. Lena turned to look at him, and for a brief moment, her eyes softened. I couldn't believe it. Was this really happening? Was this the person she had become? A woman who could kiss another man in front of her husband, brush it off like it was nothing, and then turn back to that man as if nothing had changed? I wanted to scream, but instead, I stood there, paralyzed. Jack's eyes flicked over to me, his grin widening just slightly, and I knew. He knew what had happened. He knew that I knew. And the worst part? He didn't care. Lena smiled at him, and in that moment, I realized something. I wasn't the one who mattered here. Not anymore. Jack spoke first, his voice smooth and dripping with charm. "Hey man," he said, the casual tone in his voice making my skin crawl. "Everything okay here? We were just having a little fun, right? I wanted to punch him. I wanted to tell him everything I was feeling in that moment. The betrayal, the anger, the confusion. But instead, I just stood there, silently watching as Lena's hand brushed against his arm, the same way she had touched me just hours before. I was invisible, and it hurt more than anything. I should have walked away. I should have turned on my heel and left the party, left the entire situation behind me. But I didn't. Instead, I stayed rooted to the spot, watching them, the two of them standing there like they shared some private joke, like I wasn't even in the room. I could feel the blood rushing in my ears, my heart pounding louder with every second. Jack's casual grin seemed to mock me, and Lena looked at him like she had every right to be standing there, touching him, as if nothing had changed. For a moment, I felt small, insignificant, invisible, like I was a ghost, just drifting in and out of their little world. I wanted to scream, to confront them both right there and then, but something inside me just froze. Was I really going to let this happen? Let my wife stand there, brushing off everything like it was nothing? You okay, buddy? Jack asked, still with that grin plastered on his face, but now there was something colder behind it. Something that told me he knew exactly what he was doing. You seem a little tense. It was like a challenge. He was daring me to react, daring me to step up and make a scene. And for a moment, I considered it. I could have let him have it, told him everything I was feeling, but something stopped me. Maybe it was the years I had spent trying to keep the peace, trying to be the one who didn't stir the pot. Maybe it was the fact that, deep down, I knew this wasn't just about Jack. It was about Lena. And if she was willing to do this, to let this happen in front of me, then maybe there was something bigger going on. I turned to Lena, my voice low, shaky. Is this what you want? I asked, my eyes searching hers, trying to make sense of it all. To just pretend like nothing happened? Like this is normal? She didn't flinch. Her eyes met mine, but they were distant, almost cold. You're making it a bigger deal than it is. Why are you acting like this? You know how these things go. We're just having fun. Her words were flat, almost rehearsed. She wasn't even trying to apologize. She was justifying it. And that stung more than anything else. I took a deep breath, trying to calm the storm inside me. Fun, I echoed, disbelief flooding my veins. This isn't fun, Lena. This is betrayal. My voice cracked, and for the first time, I felt myself unraveling. The truth was staring me in the face, and I couldn't ignore it anymore. I thought I knew her. I thought I understood our marriage. We had shared everything, the good and the bad, the highs and the lows. But this was something else entirely. This was something I wasn't prepared for. Jack was still there, leaning casually against the bar, watching the exchange like he was some sort of spectator at a show he didn't care to be part of. He wasn't even bothering to hide the satisfaction in his eyes. He had won. Lena's smile was thin, almost pitying now. You're overreacting, she said, almost condescendingly. You really need to calm down. This isn't the end of the world. I could feel the walls closing in. The room was suddenly too small, too suffocating. I wasn't sure if it was the wine in my stomach, the rage in my chest, or just the crushing realization that everything I thought I knew about Lena, about us, was crumbling right in front of me. Is this what you want? I asked again, this time more softly, as if somehow asking would make her understand the weight of what she had done. Is this the woman you want to be? Is this how you want to treat me? I could feel the bitterness rising in my throat, but I couldn't stop it. I needed to know. Her expression flickered for a second, like I had caught her off guard. But it was gone just as quickly, replaced with the same indifference she had shown all night. She shrugged, her hands dropping to her sides as she turned slightly away from me. I don't know what you're expecting, but this is how it is. This is the reality of what I do. I can't be expected to live in your world forever. Her eyes narrowed, but her tone was matter of fact, like she had made her decision. You knew what you were marrying into. I felt like I had been slapped. I had spent the last few years building my life around her, supporting her, believing that we were partners in this thing we called marriage. But now it seemed like everything I had done, everything I had sacrificed, was nothing more than a footnote in her larger, more glamorous world. I opened my mouth to say something, but the words died on my lips. What was there to say? What could I say to a woman who was so convinced that everything she did was justified, that her actions had no consequence? She had already made up her mind. And me? I was just some guy who had failed to keep up. Jack finally stepped forward, breaking the silence that had settled between us like a heavy fog. "Hey, man, don't make this harder than it needs to be," he said, his voice dripping with false sympathy. "It's all in good fun. You should join us. Lighten up a bit." I wanted to punch him. The audacity, the arrogance, it made my blood boil. But I knew if I did, it would only prove his point. I wasn't in control here. I wasn't the one calling the shots. And worse, Lena was siding with him. I looked at her one last time, hoping to see some flicker of remorse, some hint that she still cared about what we had. But all I saw was indifference. She wasn't the woman I had married anymore. And the truth was, I didn't know who she was anymore. I took a step back, my body tense, my fists clenched at my sides. I can't do this. I can't pretend like this is nothing. I turned away from them, from the people who had once been a part of my life, and walked out of the ballroom without another word. As I stepped into the cool night air, I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't going back to the person I was before. Something had broken between us, something I couldn't fix, and now I had to figure out how to move forward. But the question was, where would I go from here? What was left for me in this life I had been living? I left the ballroom without looking back, my mind spinning in a whirlwind of thoughts. The crisp air outside felt refreshing, but even the cold couldn't clear the fog in my head. I leaned against the brick wall of the hotel, taking deep breaths to steady myself. I had always been the one to hold things together, the one to keep calm and rational, but tonight, everything felt like it was unraveling. I stared out into the city lights, but nothing seemed familiar anymore. The streets, the cars, the people walking by, it was all so distant. Everything in my life had just been flipped upside down, and I was struggling to find any solid ground. How had it come to this? How had Lena, my Lena, become someone I didn't even recognize? I kept hearing her words in my head, over and over again. "You knew what you were marrying into." She had said that so matter-of-factly, as if she had just dismissed our entire relationship as if it was a minor detail. Was I really that naive? Had I ignored all the signs, all the little things that didn't add up? I thought we had something special, something real. But now, I wasn't sure what was left. I pulled my phone from my pocket and stared at it for a moment. I could call her, ask her what the hell was going on. But what would that accomplish? She had already made her position clear. She wasn't sorry. She wasn't even trying to hide it. And what if I confronted her again, only to hear more of the same? I wasn't sure I could take that. But I needed answers. I needed closure, something to make sense of all of this. I couldn't just walk away, not without understanding why everything had changed. I slipped my phone back into my pocket and walked aimlessly down the street. My mind was racing, but my body felt like it was moving on autopilot. I didn't know where I was going, but I had to get away. I had to get some space between me and the nightmare that had unfolded back at that party. Hours passed, but I didn't care. The city was quiet now, the noise from the event a distant memory. I found myself sitting on a bench near the river, the dark water rippling under the dim light from the street lamps. It was peaceful here, almost serene. But inside, my mind was anything but calm. I thought about the kiss. The way Jack had leaned in. The way Lena hadn't even hesitated. The way she had brushed it off like it was nothing. Was it just a joke to her? A game she was playing? I couldn't make sense of it. It didn't feel like something you could just laugh off. It felt real. Too real. And then there was the part that was eating away at me. The part that made me feel like I was losing control. The way she had looked at me. Almost like she was waiting for me to just accept it. To just understand that this was the way things were. Was that her way of saying she didn't care anymore? That she was done with us? The thought made me sick. I pulled my jacket tighter around me, trying to ward off the chill that had nothing to do with the weather. The longer I sat there, the more the weight of everything pressed down on me. Lena had crossed a line, and I couldn't pretend like it didn't matter. But why had she done it? Why had she kissed Jack, knowing how it would hurt me? Was it just the thrill of the moment? Or was there something more to it? Something I wasn't seeing? I could feel the anger rising again, that familiar, burning ache deep in my chest. But there was something else too, something deeper. A fear that maybe, just maybe, Lena wasn't the person I thought she was. Maybe she hadn't been for a long time. I stood up abruptly, my mind made up. I had to do something. I couldn't just sit here and let her continue playing me for a fool. I needed to get the truth, no matter what. No more games. No more pretending. If she wasn't going to be honest with me, then I would find out for myself. I walked back to the hotel, my steps quick and purposeful. I wasn't sure what I was going to say when I saw her again, but I knew it wouldn't be pretty. She had crossed a line, and I wasn't about to let her think she could get away with it. Not anymore. When I arrived back at the hotel, the lobby was quieter than before, the guests having dispersed to their rooms after the event. I walked past the reception desk without a word, heading straight for the elevator. The feeling of dread in my stomach grew heavier with each passing second. The elevator door slid open, and I stepped inside. My reflection in the polished metal walls stared back at me, a man I didn't recognize. I wasn't sure who I had become, but I knew one thing for sure. I couldn't go back. Not after what I had seen, not after everything that had been said. The Lena I had known, my wife, was gone. And in her place, there was someone else. Someone I wasn't sure I even wanted to know. The elevator stopped on the top floor, and I stepped out, my heart pounding in my chest. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for whatever was coming next. But as I reached our room, I hesitated. What was I even expecting? Would she be waiting for me, ready to apologize? Or would she be gone, already slipping away into a new life without me? I knocked softly on the door, my hand trembling. I had to know what was going on, but the silence on the other side of that door was deafening. The door opened slowly, and there she was, Lena, standing in the doorway, her eyes tired but guarded. She had changed into something more casual, a loose shirt and sweatpants, as though she hadn't just betrayed the person who was supposed to matter most in her life. I couldn't read her expression. It was a mixture of something I couldn't place, regret, perhaps, or maybe something more calculated, like she was waiting for me to say something first. My mind was a blur, but the one thing that stood out was how distant she seemed. I could feel the walls she had built up between us, and I was stuck on the outside, desperately trying to figure out where I fit into this mess. I had just seen her kiss another man, and yet, she looked at me like nothing had happened, like it was just another night in the life of the busy, successful woman she had become. "You're back," she said, her voice low, almost too calm. "I didn't expect you to come back this late." I stepped into the room, not even bothering to respond to her. The anger and confusion inside me swirled like a storm, and I could feel the tension building with every breath I took. "Lena," I said, my voice strained, "we need to talk. About what happened tonight." She didn't flinch. She didn't look surprised. It was as if she had already mentally prepared herself for this conversation, and I hated how much she seemed prepared for everything, like she had been planning for this moment for a while. "What do you want to talk about?" she asked, her gaze drifting to the window as if she were thinking about something else entirely. I couldn't hold it in anymore. The frustration, the betrayal, everything that had been festering inside me since I saw her with Jack came rushing to the surface. I took a step forward, my fists clenched at my sides. "You kissed him, Lena. You kissed Jack right in front of me. And then you acted like it was nothing. You brushed it off like it was just some stupid joke." Her eyes flickered for just a moment, but then she regained her composure. "It wasn't a big deal," she said, her tone dismissive, like she was explaining something trivial, something that shouldn't matter. "It was just a kiss. People do it all the time, especially in my world." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Your world," I repeated, the words tasting bitter on my tongue. "Is that what this is to you now? Your world? Because I thought we were a team, Lena. I thought we were in this together." She sighed, running a hand through her hair. "I didn't mean to hurt you, but this is just how it works. This is how people in my industry act. You know that. You've seen it before. It's not personal." "Not personal?" I felt the anger rising again, but I held it in, fighting to stay calm. "You think this is just a part of your job? You think kissing someone is just another industry thing? That's not how it works. That's not how we work, Lena." She took a step back, her eyes narrowing slightly. "You're overreacting," she said, crossing her arms defensively. "I thought you understood how things are. I thought you could handle it. But clearly, I was wrong." I could feel the frustration building, my heart racing in my chest. "Handle it? Handle what? You've completely changed, Lena. This isn't the woman I married. The woman I married wouldn't have done something like this. She wouldn't have kissed another man like it was nothing. And now you're telling me I need to just accept it?" She hesitated for a moment, the wall she had been building up slowly starting to crack. But instead of an apology, instead of the understanding I had been hoping for, she said something that completely shattered any hope I had left. "Maybe you're not enough for me anymore. Maybe you never were." The words hit me like a ton of bricks. I felt like I had been punched in the gut. I wanted to say something, anything, but for a moment, all I could do was stare at her, trying to make sense of what she had just said. Was this really happening? Had she really just told me that I wasn't enough for her? I can't believe you're saying this, I said, my voice breaking. After everything we've been through, after all the years we've spent together, you're telling me I'm not enough? Is that it? She turned her back to me, walking toward the window. You're not enough in the way I need you to be, she muttered, her voice barely above a whisper. And I can't keep pretending like everything's fine when it's not. I was frozen, unable to respond. My mind was racing, trying to process everything she had just said. I had always thought Lena was the one I would spend my life with, the one I would grow old with. But now, I wasn't so sure anymore. She had made her choice. She had chosen Jack, and she had chosen the world that came with him, the world that I could never be a part of. I wanted to scream at her. I wanted to demand answers, to demand that she explain herself. But the truth was, I knew what the answer would be. She had already made her decision. She had already moved on, and I was just in the way. You can't just throw everything we've built away, I said quietly, my voice shaking with emotion. You can't just give up on us like this. She didn't turn around. She didn't even acknowledge me. The silence between us was suffocating, and I felt like I was drowning in it. I'm sorry, she said softly, almost as an afterthought. But this is who I am now. And if you can't accept that, then maybe it's time we go our separate ways. The words cut through me like a knife. I didn't want to hear them, but I couldn't deny the truth. She had made her choice, and I wasn't part of it. I wasn't the person she needed me to be anymore, and I wasn't sure I could ever be that person again. Without another word, I turned and walked out of the room, the sound of the door closing behind me echoing in the silence. I didn't know where I was going or what I was supposed to do next. But one thing was certain, the life I thought I had was gone. And now, I was left trying to figure out what came after. The night felt like it was suffocating me. The words Lena had said echoed in my head, over and over, each time cutting deeper. Maybe you're not enough for me anymore. I couldn't escape them. I walked aimlessly through the hotel lobby, the fluorescent lights harsh against my skin. It was as if the world around me hadn't noticed what had just happened. People continued with their lives, laughing, chatting, oblivious. And I was standing there, caught in the wreckage of my own marriage, trying to figure out where everything had gone wrong. I stepped outside into the cool night, trying to collect myself. The crisp air didn't help. If anything, it made the tightness in my chest worse. The city was alive around me, full of people going about their lives, while I was standing still, trapped in the aftermath of something I didn't understand. I needed space. My brain was on overdrive, replaying every moment from that night. Lena's smile when she kissed Jack, the way she brushed it off like it was nothing, the way she looked at me just now, as if she had already made up her mind. I kept thinking, if I had only seen the signs earlier. But no, I had been too caught up in my own feelings, in the illusion that things were still good between us. I had missed it. I had missed everything. I pulled out my phone, my hands trembling slightly as I scrolled through my contacts. I considered calling her, asking for some kind of explanation, but I already knew what the answer would be. She had closed the door on us without even a second thought. And honestly, I wasn't sure I wanted to hear her excuses anymore. I needed to hear the truth. The cold, hard truth. But maybe it was too late for that. Instead, I found myself scrolling through old pictures of us. Pictures from when things were better, when we laughed together, when everything felt real. I didn't even recognize the people in those photos anymore. The smile seemed like a memory from a different lifetime, and it hit me hard. How had we gone from that? From happiness, from love, to this cold, empty shell of what we had been. I couldn't stay here, in this city, in this life that felt like it was falling apart. But I also knew I couldn't just run away. Not yet. There were things I needed to confront, things I needed to understand before I could leave. I wasn't sure what that meant yet, but I couldn't keep pretending I was okay. I couldn't keep living in this limbo, not knowing if Lena even cared anymore. I stood up, my fingers still clinging to my phone, but I knew I had to get out of here. I couldn't keep walking the same paths, pretending everything would go back to normal. It was clear now. Lena had made her decision. She was no longer the woman I married, and maybe, in some twisted way, neither was I. But I wasn't going to lie to myself anymore. The truth was staring me in the face, and it was time I faced it head on. The thought of returning to the hotel room made my stomach churn. I knew Lena was still inside, probably lying in bed, pretending like everything was fine, pretending like she hadn't just destroyed everything we'd worked for. It was unbearable. The silence between us had never been more deafening, and yet, I couldn't bring myself to go back. I needed clarity. So I left. I walked out into the night, the darkness swallowing me up as I tried to clear my head. I didn't know where I was going or what I was looking for, but I couldn't stay in that hotel anymore. I needed to get away from her, from the life we had shared. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I was on my own. And maybe that was what I needed, to be alone with my thoughts, to figure out who I was without Lena. As I walked through the empty streets, the harsh lights from street lamps casting long shadows on the pavement, I thought about everything we had been through together. The late nights, the struggles, the triumphs. There had been love there, hadn't there? At least, I thought there was. But love wasn't supposed to feel like this. Love wasn't supposed to feel like a constant fight, like being on the edge of losing yourself. I stopped at a small diner down the street, the neon sign flickering in the distance. It was the kind of place that didn't care about who you were, where you came from, or what you were running from. It was just a place for people to sit, drink coffee, and think. I stepped inside and took a seat in a booth by the window, the silence around me comforting in its simplicity. As I sat there, staring out the window at the dark, empty streets, I realized something. I had been so focused on trying to save a marriage that was already falling apart that I hadn't taken the time to think about myself. Who was I, really? Was I the man I thought I was? The man Lena had married? Or had I been someone else all along? I ordered a coffee, trying to steady my thoughts. The warm cup in my hands felt like the only thing holding me together at that moment. I needed to figure out what came next. I couldn't keep going in circles, looking for answers from someone who wasn't going to give them to me. It was time to stop waiting for Lena to change, to stop hoping that she would somehow come to her senses. This was on me now. It was my turn to decide what happened next. I didn't know what the future held, but for the first time in a long while, I knew I had to face it alone. The silence of the diner felt strangely comforting. I needed it. The night seemed to stretch on forever. As I sat there in the diner, nursing my coffee and watching the empty streets outside, something shifted in me. I realized that I had been so focused on the past, on what had been lost, that I hadn't given myself the chance to think about what I could still gain. I had spent so many years being consumed by my relationship with Lena, by trying to keep things together, by convincing myself that everything would somehow work out. But tonight had shown me something I couldn't ignore anymore. I couldn't wait for someone else to fix me. I couldn't keep putting my happiness into someone else's hands. As I sat there, I thought about who I was before Lena, before this marriage. I remembered the passions I had before I was caught up in trying to be the perfect husband. I remembered the things I used to enjoy, writing, hiking, just taking time to think without any pressure. Those things had become distant memories, things I pushed aside in the pursuit of maintaining a perfect relationship. But now, I realized those things were still part of me. They hadn't gone anywhere. I left the diner after a while, the air outside feeling sharper, cleaner. The weight on my shoulders wasn't as heavy anymore. I didn't have all the answers yet, but I knew one thing for sure. I had to start living for myself again. I had to reclaim my life. The next few days weren't easy. I spent time reflecting, taking long walks, and finally answering the questions I had been avoiding. What did I want? What kind of life did I want to build? I knew I had to let go of the idea of fixing something that had already broken, but I also knew it didn't have to mean the end of everything. It was the beginning of something new. A few weeks later, I took a trip on my own, something I had wanted to do for a long time. I went to a small town by the coast, where the waves crashed against the shore and the salty air filled my lungs. It was peaceful there. I found a small cafe by the beach and spent hours writing, something I hadn't done in ages. I felt a sense of calm that I hadn't felt in a long time. And as the days passed, something amazing happened. I started to feel like myself again. I didn't need someone else to define who I was. I was enough on my own. And for the first time in a long time, I felt hope. Real, unfiltered hope. Hope that I could move forward and find happiness on my own terms. I didn't need closure from Lena anymore. I had given myself the space to heal. And the more I let go of the past, the more I realized that I wasn't defined by anyone else's choices. I was free. Free to rediscover myself, to rebuild my life, and to create a future that I was proud of. The road ahead was uncertain, and I didn't have all the answers. But I was no longer afraid of what came next. I had learned that sometimes you have to lose yourself to truly find who you are. And with that newfound strength, I knew that whatever the future held, I would face it with open arms. For the first time in months, I could smile again.